back, everybody. It's been a few weeks, so we're gonna catch up on what we've missed, and we have also been putting together a new podcast, a video podcast. The first episode of which will drop roughly in tandem with this, and you'll find the link on DigiGods.com. It is going to be the first episode of the Godcast, and Tim and I sat down with our longtime friend of the podcast, Sherman Augustus, for a very interesting discussion. I think it went well, don't you, Tim?
Oh, it was great talk. It was fun, but also relevant. You know, to the whole sort of
everything that's going on.
Yeah,
we're gonna tease it like that and let you check it out. But definitely go to cinegods.com and look for when that drops, and it will be dropping on our YouTube channel. And I am sorry to say we lost the last of the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Well, it's funny that you said it that way. I actually was having this conversation with my mother as we joined for the podcast. And of course, you're talking about Ed.
Ed Asner.
91.
Yeah.
And my mother said that, he's the last one. And I had to remind my mother, Betty White ain't dead.
That's true. That is true.
And she's like, I think she's crushing 100. Late 90s anyway.
Yeah, she's late 90s. That's true. Betty White is not considered sort of the core of that show.
I know. Not Gavin McLeod, not you. And for that matter, I had to point out that John Amos is still walking around. And I know people forget John Amos was on that show. Ted we lost a long time ago.
Well, Ted died. I mean, this is what's crazy. You know, Ted died in 86.
86.
He was, I think, even still doing, or might have been right at the tail end of Too Close for Comfort.
Yeah.
What's
the name of that? What's the name of that show? The one with his daughters? Is it Too Close?
Yes, that was Too Close for Comfort.
Okay,
Too Close for Comfort. And Jim J. Bullock as what was his character's name? Monroe.
Yeah,
Monroe. I actually sat in the studio audience for that during the 1980s at one point, and it was just priceless. It was right after, somewhere around the time the movie Cujo had come out, and during the breaks between scenes. We're going to get back to the Mary Tyler Moore Show in a moment here, but bear with me for this. In the breaks between scenes, Jim J. Bullock could not shut up about how much he hated the movie Cujo, and he's just ripping on Cujo, and he's recreating dumb scenes from the movie Cujo, and the audience is laughing harder at his little ad libs between scenes than anything that was in the episode. It was quite a thing. But we lost Ted Knight in 86, and then everybody else stuck around just until 4 years ago. And then we lost. Was it Valerie first? And no, it was Mary.
I think it was Mary.
No, it was Mary in 2017, and then I think Valerie in 2019.
Yeah.
And then just this year we lost 3. We lost Gavin. We lost obviously just lost Lou, and we lost Cloris.
Yeah. That's
crazy. 3 in 1 year. But I don't know. Go Betty, go for 100.
Stick around too, John Amos. People forget John was on that show. John was not only,
but John's young. John's how old is John?
John's only maybe 80, 81.
Yeah.
John was around the same year as my dad, 39. I'm looking at it, I think so. He was there, but he's
like 82.
He was there. John looks the same now. This is what's nuts.
I know.
I swear, just sort of like standing there looking right at him. It's like, geez. What the hell, dude?
I know.
You look exactly the same. He moves a little slow, John.
Right.
He was just in Coming to America too. But he looks exactly the same. It is absolutely bizarre. But you gotta love it. So hang in there, John Amos, hang in there, Betty White.
We're pulling for you. So we also have this. Did you get your Total Filmmaker book?
I absolutely did. Where is it? It's behind me someplace. Yeah.
It's fantastic. So we should point out to everybody, this has been out of print for a long time. You need to run as hard as you can to get this. This is one of, we talked about this recently when we talked to John Badham, saying that John Badham, yeah, baby, here's mine, right on. We were talking about John Badham and the Sidney Lumet books being pretty much the best books about filmmaking written by a filmmaker. Well, now we can add a third because it's back in print, and it is Jerry Lewis's The Total Filmmaker, with a new foreword by our good friend Leonard Maltin. People just don't give Jerry enough credit. This is an amazing. Jerry started obviously as a young comic in the Catskills. doing that thing, that all the young Jewish comics did. You couldn't get clubs anywhere else because, you're Jewish. So you go to the Catskills where all the Jewish people vacation and it, you got to start. And then they migrated from there and a lot of them got big careers. And Jerry obviously teamed up with Dean and had the great TV show. And then what dovetailed into movies, and then they come out of movies and he gets his own movies and he started to fall in love with the process. This is a guy who never thought he'd be a filmmaker. He was just going to be a comic and an actor, and he fell in love with the process and started hanging out with the set designers and with the editors and with the sound mixers. And he basically learned filmmaking from all of these people as he just circulated between every department in the studio.
Yeah.
And he eventually went on to teach at USC and wrote this amazing book. It is dense. It is, not even in 200 pages. But it is such an incredible philosophical walk through him, his movies, and everything that you need to know to make a movie. And it's all still valid. I almost wanted to cry reading some of this stuff. I've just kind of been skimming it, but it's just a beautiful book. I'm so thrilled this is in print again.
Original copyright 1971. So Jerry was writing this when he was right there in the midst of these things. Jerry gets credited with all kinds of wonderful innovations. He used to say he invented video tap. He didn't exactly invent the video tap, but he conceived the notion of the video tap being a system by which a director can watch what is being shot as they are still filming on 35 millimeter film, but Jerry conceived the notion as video came around, as opposed to kinescopes and things like that, of being able to, line up a video camera and run that video camera to a separate video feed so Jerry could actually watch things. It wasn't video tap exactly as we know it today, but it was a hell of a notion and Jerry figured that out.
It's so interesting. I mean, for example, where he's talking about, in pre-production, and he's talking about, color versus black and white, because obviously Jerry made movies in color and black and white, and he was very much part of that moment when everything was migrating. And as color became less expensive, almost everything wound up in color by the late 60s. But it's a really, really fascinating section. And he's talking about Fellini and how some people have compared what he did in The Ladies' Man to Fellini's use of color in Juliet of the Spirits. I'm like, whoa, that's going deep. I would never have made that connection. But this is a really great paragraph here. He says, I've seen art directors design sets, select the colors, and finally, when they're being painted, yell, pour more white, it's too blue. You wind up with a dumb blue, a pastel. Fear, it's the hangover from Hollywood's black and white days when all the rugs were tan and all the walls were light green. And there are other rules. Murder mysteries should have somber colors. I think they need more color than comedies. But by continually pushing it down, you wind up with washed out color, sepias or halftones. Color is another part of the magic, the majesty of making films, and should be used that exact way. Like that's not the Jerry Lewis we know who's going, blah-blah-blah. That's a really, that's a thoughtful filmmaker. A thoughtful filmmaker. It's just so beautiful to go that deep. I love it. The whole book is that stuff.
It's wonderful. Back toward the back of the book, there are all kinds of notes and pages from various different scripts, screenplays, with all kinds of wonderful handwritten notes. That Jerry wrote into the margins of many of his screenplays, Nutty Professor, Cinderfella, all of that kind of stuff. So he's taking you deep inside his process. And what's fabulous is that he had a process.
I love it.
We look at the movies and it's easy to dismiss those movies, but those movies are not dismissible. Everything that you're seeing on screen was conceived and executed for a specific reason in a specific way. Love it, don't love it, whatever. But it was all conceived and executed very specifically for an audience that was, plainly a very large audience and included a good deal more than just the French. Very much
so. Very true. Well, shall we take a dive into it? Everything's, we're still in COVID Central here, have been for about a year and a half. But people are still going back to the movies. Movie theaters are open. So we'll get back to normal, people. You can email us at gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com. Tell us what you're doing. Give us a little insight into what life's all about. Go to our Facebook pages. And
we did a wonderful thing. I don't know if we had a chance to tell the folks the thing that we did with our buddy Brian Sebastian.
Oh yeah, we posted that. We posted that onto the Facebook page.
It's on the Facebook page.
It's
Check it out. Great conversation there too about what's going on now. So a lot of chit chatting going on about all.
That was very good. Brian is a hell of a podcaster. We have a lot to learn from him. I'd love to sit down and have him walk us through what he does. He just hits a huge audience globally. It's very impressive.
Yeah.
So, and we've known Brian for 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. Where should we start with this? New movies? Should I get it? Oh, Criterion. Maybe we should hit the Criterions out of the
why don't you go ahead and crank some of those out while I get prepped up on a few others.
Yeah. So I'm going to start off with a Criterion that I never expected to see, which is the original cast album of Company. I'm going to pull that out here. Give me a second. This is really interesting. This is a D.A. Pennebaker film, we should point out. If it weren't made by D.A. Pennebaker, if we didn't have that sort of great documentary, direct cinema pedigree, it might not be here. But it's really, really interesting. And these are, of course, all on Blu-ray. We're not into the 4Ks yet. Criterion just announced their first 4K slate, so we're going to be very excited to see that roll in. But this is really great. This is kind of something that's been hard to get in many respects. And, Company is one of those great Stephen Sondheim musicals that has never been made as a movie.
Yeah.
And the stage production, of course, was staged by the great Harold Prince. And this is D.A. Pennebaker taking you inside the process, behind the curtain, behind the scenes, behind backstage, and how they're putting together the original cast album. The original cast album, and the original cast album of Company is a huge seller too, and everyone loves it. So this is kind of that nexus where documentary and musical and music, cast album music, all sort of intersect, and it's a really fascinating nexus. It's a great documentary, and like The Total Filmmaker by Jerry Lewis, it gives you an amazing insight into the process, and it's just great seeing Elaine Stritch there. Elaine Stritch, just if you're of a certain generation, Elaine Stritch is just such an amazing lady. It's just so wonderful.
Yeah.
The amazing Japanese film Afterlife by Hirokazu Koreeda from 1998, right? Yeah, 98. This was one of those beautiful movies that sort of helped push Koreeda into the forefront of international cinema. Got him a lot of international exposure, definitely here. And it is a lovely poetic movie, like all of his movies are. And they all, like all of his movies, they sort of ask these deep existential philosophical questions and don't work too hard to answer them. They just sort of want to lead you through a process of pursuing the question and answering it in your own way. And his movies really, really are just beautiful. And this is I think still after 23 years, still one of his best. It's just it's a wonderful look at what it means to sort of live between mortality and immortality and to reflect. And it's just a fantastic film. Ashes and Diamonds by the great Polish director Andrzej Wajda. Wajda is how it's spelled. Andrzej Wajda, who did receive an honorary Oscar before he died. This is from 1958, still one of his best films. And Andrzej Wajda, wait a minute, I'm just thinking, is Wajda still alive?
I don't know.
He might, because hang on a second, because he made a film a few years ago about a famous, hold on, I just want to verify this because he made a great film just a few years ago that he died on 2016. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Because he made a film just before he died about a famous Polish dissident painter, which I thought was incredible. All right, confirmed. He was accorded an honorary Academy Award, I think around 2010, something like that. So Ashes and Diamonds is one of the films that really kind of brought Polish cinema to the fore internationally as well in 1958, which is sort of when a lot of Eastern European cinema was staking its claim, the Czech New Wave and some Soviet stuff, Russian stuff. Anyway, Ashes and Diamonds, still an absolutely fantastic film. A bit of a controversial film at the time too, because it does have anti-communist underpinnings to it. So, it's a little bit of a miracle that it actually made its way into the world. Beasts of No Nation by Cary Joji Fukunaga, who is about to show us what he can do with James Bond. This is a long way to go from Beasts of No Nation just 6 years ago to James Bond. Tim,
even further from Sin. What was the name of the one on the train? Was it his first film? I think it was Sin Nombre, maybe.
Oh yeah, something like that. Yeah.
The one with the gang guy on top of the train going all the way. It's just an amazing film. But yeah, in just a short few years, that's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it was Sin Nombre. It was Sin Nombre, and he made that really aggressive kind of his version of Jane Eyre. Yeah, he, sort of revisionist Jane Eyre. I mean, Beasts of No Nation kind of came out of nowhere, at least for me in 2015. I was not quite on the Cary Fukunaga bandwagon at that point. I know a lot of other people were already on it. This is the one that kind of caught my attention. In any case, it is quite a movie, and it's based on on a novel that details the civil war that's going on in West Africa, and focuses primarily on this young kid who the toll that all the trauma and the war takes on him, and his journey thereafter, and how he's kind of turned into a child soldier, and it addresses a lot of these really, really rough issues. But fascinating film. Cary Fukunaga seems to want to go far and wide. He doesn't restrict his vision to any particular cultural area, which is fascinating because he is half Caucasian and half ethnic Japanese, and he doesn't sort of let that limit his artistic impulses. And I think that's pretty great, and it's a great example for all of us. Idris Elba, by the way, is the brutal warlord in this thing. It's pretty chilling.
Cary, he also had a run at one of those that series that they were doing. That they did. What was that series? That True Detective series.
Oh, he did. Yes, he did.
Yeah. He had a real good run there. It might have been the first run, but he had a real good run with his sort of
sure did.
That series. So that might have been what put him on the path toward that James Bond there. He did some really good work on that.
Well, it's nice because he's done the Ang Lee thing, which is that he's worked in so many different genres and on so many different subjects that people don't pigeonhole him now, right? Yeah. They don't say, "Oh, you need to do the Asian thing or the this thing or the ad thing." He just says, "I want to make a movie, I want to tell a story, and this is what I want to do." And he now transcends whatever stereotypes people might have tried to impose on him before.
It's interesting. It's going to be one of the things that we talk about on the Godcast.
On the Godcast,
in a larger sense, not him specifically, but
we go there. It's the thing. Jacques Dere's famous La Piscine is also out in a Blu-ray. You can also see this on the Criterion channel at the moment, and it is worth checking out. It's pretty hard to not absolutely love this movie. It's got Romy Schneider and Alain Delon, and they're scantily clad in the movie because La Piscine means the swimming pool. So, swimming pool, Alain Delon, Romy Schneider. It doesn't really matter what it's about. It's French, and it's got those two actors, and there's water, and they're wet. And I shouldn't really have to sell it any more than that. A lot of great extras on here, though. A 2019 documentary by Agnès Vincent Dere, featuring Alain Delon and Jane Birkin, the mother of the former wife of Serge Gainsbourg and the mother of Charlotte Gainsbourg. And also with Jean-Claude Carrière, who passed away recently, the great screenwriter and novelist Jean-Emmanuel Conil. It's a very, very cool documentary. And lots of great archival footage and even an alternate ending, which isn't as good. Working Girls. It's not. I mean, it's not. Working Girls. Lizzie Borden's great Working Girls director approved edition. I'm not a giant fan of Working Girls, Tim. I don't know if you really. I'm not really a big fan of Lizzie Borden, to be honest.
Well, you have Lizzie's work and that movie in particular. You have to consider in the context of the time and the period. It lives there. Yeah. and what in terms of what it's speaking to. So at the time, it was really sort of interesting stuff that just hadn't been covered before by filmmakers. You know, Allison Anders and Lizzie and who else back then? Susan Seidelman.
They were part of that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a whole little moment there. 2 or 3 other ones that I'm forgetting right now that she was a part of that whole world.
And then from the early 90s, we got Deep Cover by Bill Duke, who is not directed enough. Why has Bill Duke not directed more?
Bill was ill for quite a while. So that kind of got to him. Bill's a little bit older than we like to think of him as being too. But Deep Cover, Jeff and Lawrence Fishburne, I think it was still Larry Fishburne back then.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in some sort of mixing suite up in Burbank, I think it was, when Bill was mixing Deep Cover, and I had an interview with him, and we were going to do it in the office. He's like, "Yeah, you come over here," and I sat in the mixing suite with Bill as they were mixing some of the business coming out of Deep Cover. It was really, really cool. Love Bill Duke, just a hell of a director. But also, people forget Bill Duke was a hell of an actor.
Still
wonderful
is.
Actor, Bill Duke.
He was just in something recently, playing all gangstered up. I wish I could remember what it was. Some just recently, literally this year, and looking not very healthy, but he's really. Oh, it's the Soderbergh film. It's the Soderbergh film.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. He's terrific in it. He's just terrific. That's it's sad, but it's like all the weight that he lost, and he looks very thin. You know, Bill Duke used to be a real big, imposing guy. He's very emaciated, and like he lost all this weight, and you're thinking, where'd it go? Went on to Brendan Fraser.
Apparently.
I hate to say it, but that's what happened.
Apparently Brendan Fraser ate Bill Duke. But Bill was in what? Bill's in, I think he's one of the guys in the first Predator. Isn't he one of the badasses?
Yep,
in the
he
first
sure
Predator?
is. He sure is. Yes, he is. I'm
going to go back a little bit from trying to catch my first Bill Duke. Bill Duke is in Car Wash.
Oh yes,
with Ivan Dixon and all that. So we're all the way back to the middle 70s already. 50 years ago.
Deep Cover is a hell of a film. It's super cool and stylish. You got Jeff Goldblum in a just totally unconventional turn, who is fantastic as this drug dealer. Really, really great stuff. And it has this fabulous AFI commentary, AFI Conservatory seminar from 2018 with Bill Duke and Lawrence Fishburne, moderated by Elvis Mitchell. Which is really great. Gets in, Elvis just works him over all the issues with the film and what they're thinking and doing. It's great. It's terrific.
Bill Duke's an AFI guy, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Yes, he is.
He goes way back. Yeah.
He is indeed. Reaching way back, we got Samuel Fuller's Pickup on South Street from 1953, which is a pretty great film. Really intense performance by Richard Widmark as the wicked Skip McCoy. It's a fun film. Gene Peters. It's a really, really fun film. It's sort of classic Samuel Fuller, good crime noir, good kind of, 50s noir, because 50s noir is a little different from 40s noir. It's a real tough, hard boiled movie. And, also great extras on this thing. And then we also have, so I can get
about Samuel. Because Samuel lived a long time, too. Samuel didn't die till 1997. So I had a chance to interview Samuel
Oh, you did? Oh, that's great.
In the 90s, because, Samuel used to run around with Quentin, with Tarantino, all the time. Because, Tarantino was deeply influenced by Samuel. So whenever I would bump into Quentin, he'd always be talking about Sam Fuller. And he got me 2 or 3 interviews with Samuel. Samuel, people forget, what a forward thinking writer he was. Samuel has more writing credits than he does directing credits.
It's true.
And it's way more than just the shot corridor and all that kind of stuff. He just, a lot of stuff he pioneered as a filmmaker, but also just as a sort of literary person. So anyway, that's my little Samuel Fuller.
We also have Bringing Up Baby, the classic Howard Hawks, Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn screwball comedy. It's kind of considered in many respects the quintessential screwball comedy from 1938. And I think it's a movie very much ahead of its time in terms of style and script and acting. It's just so timeless. It's just still so funny. It really is. It's so completely off the wall. And both of these actors, Katharine Hepburn and Cary Grant, they chew the scenery like nobody's business. You realize why they are two of the greatest and just most agile movie stars of all time. The original 2005 audio commentary by Peter Bogdanovich is on here, and you should want it on here because it is a film school and a commentary. It is absolutely fantastic. And
Catherine just owns that film. I mean, I love Carrie in the film, Howard, all that, but Catherine owns that film.
He has no trouble letting her walk away with the movie, right? And that's kind of the thing you have to admire. Every scene. Yeah. Yep. He lets her walk away with every scene. It's absolutely great. And then we also have this is one that came out of the blue for me, the signifying works of Marlon Riggs. This contains films from 1986 to 1995. And Tim, how familiar are you with Marlon Riggs? Because I was not at all.
Oh, yeah, definitely know Marlon Riggs. Again, Marlon, who's from Texas, but Marlon was working during that late LA Rebellion period. The color adjustment and black is, black ain't. Never interviewed Marlon. He died rather young, ridiculously young. Marlon could have been 40 when he died in the early 90s. But he was right there in that period. He's only a little bit older than me, I think. But I always wanted to talk to him, but he passed before I had a chance to. But Color Adjustment is an amazing film. Black is, black ain't. Oh my God. Which he made that film came out the year he passed. Yeah. Died in 1994, 37 years old. Man.
Well,
man.
It's all these are all of his, to sort of summarize this. Marlon Riggs was black. He was gay. And he, during a particularly difficult period, to be both of those things at the same time. And, you've got AIDS, you've got all kinds of race issues in the late 80s, your 80s spanning into the 90s. You're also dealing with geopolitical stuff like the collapse of the Eastern Bloc. And a lot of things are going on then that obviously make it challenging to be who he was. And he evokes all of that in his work. And it is a very, very personal work, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff here. So he's a filmmaker well worth rediscovering posthumously. And
these are mostly documentaries and documentary shorts that we're talking about, rather than narrative films. Just so people know, amazing. Tongues Untied is kind of like considered one of the original inceptional points in the new queer cinema. So, he's a significant figure in a number of sort of underground cinema movements from that period. And, it's a great thing for Criterion to pull out. They come up with stuff that is not just sort of part of the obvious canon every so often. They come up with things that it's like, okay, you missed this the first time around, worth discovering and adding it to your film knowledge. So the signifying works of Marlon Riggs, good Criterion entry there. And then the one that I cannot stop raving about this is Andrei Tarkovsky's Mirror, another filmmaker taken before his time. Tarkovsky only made about a half dozen films, and Mirror is arguably, I mean, with all due respect, it's hard. Look, Solaris is amazing and Stalker is amazing. They're all amazing on some level, but Mirror has some of the most stark, stunning visuals I've ever seen in a movie. And if you've worked on a film, if you've shot a film, if you know anything about cinematography and what you have to do to capture shadow and light and, Tim, I mean, what kinds of crazy compromises happen when that you just don't see? You think it's an easy scene to shoot, right? Oh, we got an easy scene here. It's going to be easy. We'll just have some natural light here, throw up some reflectors and light. And then you'll be like, crap, there's a shadow falling on like that. How do we get that corner? Okay. So then you try to get rid of that shadow and it screws up some other part. And next thing you know, you're just pulling your hair out and you spent 2 hours trying to fix lighting for a scene that was supposed to be easy, right? Yeah, it's just lighting can be a monster. It can be a monkey on your back. And so if you know those aspects of film and you watch Mirror, you realize what a genius Tarkovsky was. There is one scene here in particular where the lead character walks into a room and, turns on a light and turns it off, turns another light on. And it's just like, okay, it's a long shot. It's a boring shot. Guys in a room, there's some light and shit. No, it's a jigsaw puzzle. It's a freaking Rubik's Cube of lighting. And if you understand it, you just think, I don't know how they did that. I don't know how long they worked to get all that lighting nuance, turning lights on, turning them off in a single room. Because usually when a light gets turned on, it's not the light that's giving you the light of the light.
it's some guy who's switching on like an HMI back there to pretend that'll make you think it's that light, right? It's unreal. This is like Stanley Kubrick, Barry Lyndon stuff. Anyway, Mirror is a miraculous movie. I love every single part of it. We haven't even talked about, the subject matter. It's
a beautiful story. And that's the other thing. Lots of poetry, actual poetry in that movie, poems in that movie. And it's about memory. Because the guy he's dying and he's thinking back over his life, but more than that, it's about Russia. It's about the nation itself. So it's extraordinary stuff.
And he is exiled from Russia, self-exiled, not too long after, because he eventually goes to Sweden to make movies, where he made The Sacrifice, which won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival in, I want to say, 91, 90, something like that. That was a great year at the Cannes Film Festival. Alan Parker's Birdie got the runner-up award.
Oh, yeah.
Good year. Anyway, that's it for Tarkovsky's Mirror, and as with the others, tons of great stuff here, including a 2007 documentary about his cinematographer, which goes into a lot of this stuff that I've just been talking about as well, and how they, all the different film stocks that they mixed, and it's really amazing stuff. Visually, one of the greatest films you'll ever see. Really, truly so. Yeah. So I've got some Arrow here. We've got new movies. We've got 4K. We got TV. Maybe some foreign if we can get into it.
I was looking at the 4K.
Okay.
If you want to take a look at the 4K, because there's a couple of interesting things in there. Excuse me. And I was wondering how, for instance, I see David Lynch's, because we got another Dune coming with Chalamet, Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
There was a Dune, I don't know, about 20 years ago now, I think, back in 2000, they did that TV thing. And then, of course, there's David Lynch's Dune. This is the Dune we're talking about, right?
I am, we feel a little bit connected to Dune here. So here's my thing, my spiel on Dune. So I met Frank Herbert once. There used to be a bookstore here in LA called Touch a Hobbit.
Oh yeah.
Which was world famous for a while. It was a science fiction fantasy bookshop. And it started up on Westwood Boulevard. And I used to go there when I was a kid and, just nerd out on all the Star Trek stuff. And then they moved, believe it or not, to 1 block away from my high school. And it's a golf shop now, but they painted, it was a space like 10 times the size. They had different rooms. They painted, murals on the walls. It was like walking into Geek Central going in there. And naturally at lunchtime when I was in high school, we're like, woo, let's go over, change a Hobbit. So we'd run over to change a Hobbit, geek out on the Star Trek stuff, and then go back to school. And they would bring authors in, right? Authors would do their book signings there. And I met Frank Herbert there. I met a lot of great authors there, but I got my copy of Dune signed by the man himself. Then, after Lynch does Dune, my wife winds up working for Lynch. And then some years after, she winds up working on the Dune miniseries. And then, of course, the new Dune film directed by a French-Canadian director that I've interviewed. So, I feel like I'm connected to all these Dune things in some weird way. And this is Lynch's Dune, which I think gets, unfortunately, way too much flack. And I'm thrilled that Arrow has put together this 4K release of it, which is great. It comes with a booklet and the 4K, and it's just the best thing ever. It's just absolutely to die for. I think it's fantastic. So
I remember going to see that movie in 1984. But I'm still in St. Louis at this particular period, and you go into the movie, you go see this movie, and they gave you the little booklet. To go see the movie so that you could follow along with this little booklet so that you could follow all the characters and all this kind of stuff. That's the thing. The booklet there should be a duplicate of the booklet that they gave filmgoers back in 1984 when you went to see Dune. That's the booklet that they should give out. I don't know if that one's that, but that's
I want to preface this too, because don't want anybody to get overly confused. This is not a 4K UHD release. It's still a Blu-ray release, but it's a 4K restoration that they took the Blu-ray from. So it's in our 4K collection here for that reason, because it's long overdue, and it's Arrow, and we got a couple other Arrows here. But nonetheless, here's what I remember when I saw Dune the first time. They handed us a glossary.
That's that thing. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
That's never happened to me before. I walk into a movie and they hand me a piece of paper, and this is your cheat sheet for the movie. I'm sorry. Well, this will explain what spice is and what, you're like, are you kidding me? Like, it's really, but there it is.
Yeah.
They hit you with it. They hit you with it pretty hard. Lots of really, really great stuff on here. The features and extras on on disc 1 are, it's just everything. I can't even get into it.
Well, you know all about this Dune.
Yeah.
And people will forget. Big movie, for one thing. All of the people that are in this movie, that I'm going to name a few now that I know a whole lot of folks will have forgotten is in this movie. Patrick Stewart is in this movie.
I know.
Sting is in this movie. Jürgen Prochnow is in this movie. Everett McGill, who of course went on to work with David and Twin Peaks and all that stuff, is in this movie. Richard Jordan is in this movie. Linda Hunt is in this movie. Jose Ferrer is in this movie. Brad Dourif is in this movie. I mean, Cal McLaughlin and Virginia. It was a
crazy cast.
That is just ridiculous. The heavy hitters that are just all over this movie.
And Toto did the score.
And Toto.
No, I was just gonna say that Toto did the score. Tim, we also from Arrow, and these are legit 4K UHD with HDR releases now. Two that also come in the same kind of packaging as Dune, with the disc in the keep case, and then a booklet. Two that I would never have expected to be on anybody's radar for this, but clearly Arrow is aware of an audience out there. We're talking about 2 Dario Argento movies, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage and The Cat o' Nine Tails.
Yeah.
I am not a Dario Argento fan. These come with giant piles of extras that almost make it worthwhile for me. I mean, interviews and featurettes and documentaries and, everything that's in the collector's booklets. And it's just on and on and on, and stuff on how they made it, and interviews with the department heads. It's crazy. Why should I like Dario Argento generally, and why should I like these 2 movies in particular? Can you make a case for me?
Well, what are you going to say about Giallo? it sort of is what it actually is, and to the extent that it is what it is, Dario does it better than anybody else.
Yeah.
Sort of framed and laid it all out the way it should be. This movie, or the first one, The Bird. I particularly love that movie. Gorgeously shot movie. Everything was saturated in color back then, not just the color red for all the blood and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of them were sort of couched as procedural thrillers. Some cop was usually investigating, some murders or something like that, which is what's going on in this film. Tony Mustante. I love Tony Mustante. People forget about him as an actor. Dark-haired, curly-haired Italian actor. Played Toma. On TV back in the day. He popped up on television all through the middle 80s, middle 90s. You'd see Tony all the time. So Tony doing his thing in this movie. I don't know. Look, I would never drag anybody into Giallo, but if you like Giallo, you might as well dig the best of it, and this is the best of it.
Well, if you like Giallo, you'll probably also like Dead and Buried, which Blue Underground has released. It's funny. 4K UHD is no longer just for new movies. Dead and Buried from Blue Underground on 4K UHD Ultra HD is kind of a weird choice because it's a total exploitation slasher film. It just would never have been if you're making a list of the top 10,000 films you're going to put on 4K. This would never have been mine, but clearly there's an audience for it. So the only thing that I really, really like about this, which is otherwise a just relentless slasher film, is
slasher slice zombie film.
It's right there. It's right there in that Wes Craven, Friday the 13th kind of place. But I like the cast. I'll say that. I really, really like the cast. We should point out that Ron Shusett and Dan O'Bannon wrote this, which those are the guys who wrote Alien. They would, so it's got good writing credentials. Robert Englund is in this. A lot of people who would go on to do their own other horror things. And I like the cast. I like Melody Anderson, who was a thing for a moment. Jack Albertson is always fun. James Farentino. So, I mean, there are some good people involved. There's a lot of great extras. Not my cup of tea, but great audio commentary, by the way, with Stephen Poster, whom we've sat next to at certain LAFCA dinners. He's wonderful. Great guy. Love Stephen Poster. We also have Transformers, the movie, 4K UHD and Blu-ray combo set. It's animated. It's a thing. Whatever. if you're a fan, you're a fan. If you're not, you're not.
To be honest, I prefer it to the live action films from the middle 2000s. This is
I don't like any of them.
This is an animation from the 80s.
I don't like any of them. And it takes place in 2005, by the way.
Well, you know what I like about this though? The voices. Yeah. You got Robert Stack doing a voice. You got Leonard Nimoy doing a voice. You got Orson Welles
Eric Idle
doing a voice. Eric Idle doing a voice. So that was always kind of cool to me. But yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's got an audio commentary and storyboards and various other things. It's fine. You got to be a fan already. And likewise, if you're a big fan of Mortal Kombat, the Mortal Kombat Legends Battle of the Realms is out 4K UHD with digital code.
That's a new one that came out this past year or two ago.
This is animated. This is this is not the new Mortal Kombat. This is an animated Mortal Kombat to go with it. Warner, kind of what Warner does with the DC things. They're trying to make Mortal Kombat a little bit of its own universe, and so that's what's going on here. It's fine. Doesn't really transcend anything. It just more of the same. So here are the ones that I really want to get us into. Let's get the two G.I. Joes out of the way first. So we have both G.I. Joe Retaliation and G.I. Joe The Rise of Cobra, which totally tanked recently, but has some great costumes in it. I mean, really great costumes. Those are both out in 4K UHD as well. Dwayne Johnson and excuse me. And Channing Tatum and Bruce Willis trying to sort of lock it down in Retaliation with the big star power, and of course went nowhere and didn't do much for it. But the question I have, first of all, do these look okay? Yeah, they look great. They look amazing. They're absolutely fantastic. The 4K is great. The UHD is, or the HDR is absolutely just dazzling. The CGI is phenomenal. It'll blow up your television set. If you have a 4K system, it'll look fantastic. But the movies don't work, Tim. Why? Nope. They keep trying so hard to make this a franchise for Paramount, because Paramount has no franchises right now. Yeah. And they're trying to make themselves one. Star Trek isn't really working out except on TV. They can't make enough of those movies. So they keep trying for G.I. Joe. They don't have Transformers anymore. So why does G.I. Joe not work? It feels like it should.
They never get the tone right. For one thing, that first G.I. Joe back in the day was more or less a comedy almost. One of them Wayans brothers was running around in it, joking and all that kind of stuff. The G.I. Joe animated that I grew up watching was never particularly a comedy. And then this one, the same thing. The tone is all wrong. So I don't know. It's just maybe it's just not. Maybe it just doesn't translate well. And then, G.I. Joe, a little bit of some of that stuff is just a little corny, the villains and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't play.
I'm trying to figure out why do these characters not work for me? They get the right actors. They get the production values right, but I can't fall in love with the world.
Yeah.
And maybe it is the tone. Maybe you're right. It's the tone. They just don't get the tone right. 35th anniversary 4K UHD release of Jim Henson's Labyrinth with David Bowie wearing the gnarliest hairstyle you've ever seen. Watching this, it comes with obviously the digital Movies Anywhere code, so you can add this to your Movies Anywhere library. This came on the heels, of course, of Dark Crystal, except it now adds David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly for a little live action stuff going on. It just doesn't have the magic of the Dark Crystal, though. It doesn't have the Henson magic on a certain level, and I keep trying to figure out why. And again, this is like with G.I. Joe. I can't figure out why this kind of falls a little short for me. Even something like The Never-Ending Story, which comes from roughly around the same period, a little bit earlier, I think, is much more imaginative and does so with less. Why does Labyrinth just not quite pull it off?
It definitely, this movie moves so much slower than a couple of the movies that you mentioned. I'm just talking about the actual pace of the movies here. And just the narrative, the story, all that kind of stuff is is Terry Jones writing Jim Henson's story. But it just doesn't move. It doesn't bring you along. Never-Ending Story, it moves pretty quickly. Particularly once you get to that third act and we start flying around on that thing. This really doesn't have that. It's a lot of dialogue We're walking around a lot. The sets and the costumes and the puppets, I guess, is
production value to spare.
Fantastic. But
it's gorgeous.
Very often, it's just an incredibly inert movie with people talking and amazing costumes and boring the crap out of me.
Well, Terry Jones wrote it based on a Trevor Jones story, and it's. I will say this about it: it's gorgeous looking, thanks to Alex Thompson, the amazing British DP, who of course shot so many great films, including Excalibur. So it has that going for it. Two new 4Ks here: Quiet Place Part 2, 4K UHD, also with digital movie code, which you can use to register for Vudu, because Paramount's not signed up with Movies Anywhere. Tim, are you a fan of the Quiet Place movies? You and I haven't really talked a lot about these.
Well, so these two movies, Quiet Place 2, look, these are films that fall under the category of things that I appreciate more than things that I actually like. And I can be a bit overly analytical of these things. I get it. Big, dumb afternoon popcorn movie. I grew up with those, thoroughly enjoyed them. But even as a kid, I needed them to have some sort of an internal consistency to make sense to me, right?
Yeah.
So baseline of the Quiet Place films, I have a problem with the baseline sort of conceit of the movie. These alien ear monsters come, they can hear you. If you make a noise, they'll swoop in and eat you, particularly in the first movie. And I'm thinking to myself, well, these people live in the worst possible place they can possibly live in a circumstance like this. And I got to tell you, they make a lot of really awful decisions. You're letting the kids wander around all over the place, grabbing stuff, playing with toys and going, shh, a lot. I'm like, seriously? This is the way we're going to defend ourselves from the aliens? We're going to go, shh. And I'm thinking to myself, you people deserve to be eaten. You're just awful. Particularly when in the first movie they got that place out by the and I don't want to ruin the movies for anybody, but it's been out by the waterfall there.
Yeah.
When you go out by the waterfall, the water's falling, and we're out by the waterfall, and we can talk normally. Build your house by the fucking waterfall. Maybe we should stay over there. Anyway, and these are like these all really practical, ultra hypercritical sort of things. But I'm sorry, once they get in my head, then I just start picking through the whole movie.
Yeah,
and in the second movie, it's just as bad. It's just as bad.
So here's my take. I agree with absolutely everything you just said. But after about a year of not sitting in a movie theater, when I had the chance to sit down in an actual honest to goodness theater and watch A Quiet Place Part 2, I didn't care about any of that. I was sitting in a big theater and I was watching monsters and I was eating my popcorn and I was back in the movie theater. And somehow my movie critic brain just kind of atrophied and went away. And I just sat there going, cool. That is monster. That's a big monster. Cool. Oh, look, they're running. Run from the monster. Run from the monster. And I was like 10 again. I was 10. I didn't care. So maybe COVID is making all of us a little bit stupid, but everything you just said is right. In any case, disc 1 has the movie. Disc 2 has the has Blu-ray and special features, including John Krasinski's diaries. Emily Blunt and John Krasinski making movies together. I think it's a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Oh yes.
By the way,
a lot of good performances in these movies too. As I poke these movies, excellent work. Just excellent performances.
And the deaf daughter, we should point out, that actress is deaf. Okay, she's a legit deaf actress, and good on him for hiring her because she's wonderful. And I just hope that like she doesn't fall into that Marlee Matlin trap where she's playing deaf people for the next 20 or 30 years. Yeah. I hope she gets more diverse roles. I hope they give her more opportunities to do more interesting things. And
that happens a lot more now than it used to. We see that with all kinds of people, where the nature of the person is integral to whatever the role is, the character is, but the part isn't about that. So if they're in a wheelchair, yes, but the film isn't about them being, or if they're, Stumptown has a wonderful young actor who's on the spectrum, and he's wonderful in Stumptown. This is like
fantastic.
He's wonderful in the show, but the show isn't about that at all. It's just some people have brothers and sisters and relatives who are on the spectrum. Yeah. So that's and when they do it like that, that's the way you want it done.
So Lin-Manuel Miranda's In the Heights was a huge Broadway success, by the way, before he did Hamilton, and they made a movie about it. And John Chu, who had done Crazy Rich Asians, directed it and just nails it. It's just filled with light and life and color, and it's just an explosion of Washington Heights, in musical numbers. And this movie is really, really fun, Busby Berkeley level dance choreography and some of this stuff. And then this poor movie, after kind of blowing up big and getting a lot of great reviews, it sort of got attacked and it kind of tanked a little bit. And so before we move on, this is 4K Ultra UHD, 4K UHD, once again, the last of them. Let's talk for just a second about, first of all, there was an attack on the movie, which I think was unfair, saying, oh, no, we get it. It's all about, the Latino people who live in Washington Heights, but you've missed the whole community of Afro-Latino people, and they're almost invisible in the movie. Your thought, is that a legitimate criticism or not?
Well, first of all, it's actually literally not true, because there are Afro Cubans, there are Black Latin Americans in this movie. There are. They don't happen to be the principal characters in the movie, but saying that he ignored their existence, that's just literally untrue. So, yeah. Because facts matter.
I feel like that was a little bit of publicity seeking, and you just kind of corroborated that.
Yeah, and by the way, literally not true.
I know one person from Washington Heights. I only know one person who's from Washington Heights, and he's Ukrainian. So
if we're going to do that, I know some Jews who live there too. So if we're going to do that, then we would have to do that about also. It's just like literally not true. Excuse me.
Now, why did it not blow up at the box office the way that everyone expected it to? This is the more interesting conversation.
Well, I think that's when we're running into this sort of spot of what we call cancel culture, or what we used to call political correctness, in all of these sorts of things. And I think it sort of freaked out the potential audience. There were lots of things that people were poking at with respect to this movie, right? So you have, the central storyline pivots around a young Dominican man and whether or not he's going to go back to or go to the Dominican Republic. I don't even think he was actually from the Dominican Republic. I think his family immigrated from the Dominican Republic.
I couldn't tell you, because that would have meant I would have had to keep track of the plot, and I was just looking at the color and listening to the music
and saw the pop and all this kind of stuff. And people were doing a lot of calculating of all these people. So beyond the Afro-Cuban thing, it's like, that guy playing the Dominican guy, he ain't Dominican. And that guy, that girl playing the Mexican girl, she ain't Mexican.
That's not fair.
And I'm like, well, look, guys, now, if we're going to start doing that, then we're going to find ourselves in all kinds of trouble. This is what I also think. Lin-Manuel probably would have done well to sit back and think to himself, where's the culture right now?
Yeah.
Where's the culture right now? And then he should have probably tried to cast that movie, which, was probably being cast and executed 2, 3, 4 years ago anyway. In such a way that it recognized that the culture has moved to a place where it would like to be very specific about these things, and less generalist about these things. So as we watch, as Steven Spielberg is I guess remaking,
West Side Story.
West Side Story.
Yeah.
A movie that I love, West Side Story, but a movie in which a Greek dude is playing, Puerto Rican?
Puerto Rican.
He's playing Puerto Rican. The Greek dude is playing Puerto Rican. I think there's only one actor. And he won an Oscar for it.
He won an Oscar for it. And the other Oscar went to the actual the only Puerto Rican playing an actual Puerto Rican, Rita Moreno.
I think she's the only Puerto Rican in the actual movie. This movie.
She is.
So can we live there anymore? No, we cannot live there anymore. We cannot have the Greek guys playing Puerto Ricans and brown face and all that. No, we can't live there anymore. That's fine. We've moved forward. Now, where are we on these things? And that's where I think we're going to have to sort this out a little bit better. I get that we can't do that. By the way, all the Puerto Ricans in Spielberg's movie are, Puerto Rican. So Spielberg learned something from that. And I think that the culture, the Hollywood, the movie making culture is simply going to have to adjust and realize that there are things that we used to do in the past that we just can't do anymore. Because people will look at them and see them, and some folks will be offended by them. They never really offend me. You know me, nothing offends me.
No, and frankly, a lot of this is part of the organic process of as different immigrant groups come to the United States and become culturally integrated and work their way up the economic ladder, they gain access to things like the movie business. And, that's just the way that things were. I mean, if you go back into the 1930s, really pretty much, if you wanted to make a movie and you were not Caucasian, you had to work in Poverty Row films, or you had to work in one of these other underground industries. Over time, all of that stuff kind of bubbles up and and goes mainstream. Same thing with exploitation films, which is what we talked about in the movie Schlock. When we made Schlock those 20 some years ago. That's the whole point, is that all these people who are working in the underground, the Corman films, the nudie cuties and so forth, they eventually worked their way up and went mainstream. Same thing with blaxploitation. Blaxploitation, everybody in those movies went mainstream at a certain point. So, the cinematographers, the actors, the writers, everybody except Larry Cohen, who kept making exploitation
because he was making money.
Because that was it.
Larry really wasn't making movies. Larry was making money.
Well, it is a global industry now, and those things migrate. Let's talk about some new films. Habit is a grindstone movie released from Lionsgate. It's not your usual grindstone movie. It's not about talking animals, and it's not. It's kind of not really about big tough guys. It doesn't have Bruce Willis or Antonio Banderas or anybody like that. But it is about some pretty ruthless nuns, and hence the name Habit, because it's a habit you'll want to acquire, as the tagline goes. Anyway, so Bella Thorne is a party girl who's running drugs in LA, and in the end, somehow there's a whole kind of Tarantino-y stolen money, Reservoir Dogs-y thing that happens, and you wind up with these women dressed as nuns and just going a little bit crazy. So they're not real nuns; they're just bad girls dressed up as nuns, and it's very exploitation-y and it's very grindstone-y, but it's a little different grindstone. And then we also have Spirit Untamed, the animated semi-sequel to the DreamWorks movie of some years ago, which was originally hand animated. It was 2D animation, cell animation. This is CG animation. It's still about a horse. I don't know. It's it's about basically three girls and their horses, one of whom is Spirit. I guess as a movie that is about girl empowerment, and these three girls from different backgrounds and different colors who form kind of a triumvirate, and it's all about growing up and doing the right thing and, following your dreams and following your passion and saving the horses from the big bad rustler people and all that stuff. I guess it's Blu-ray. It's got a Movies Anywhere code. But all I could think about was, Tim will laugh at this. People who aren't old enough to know what I'm talking about will not laugh at it. I'm watching it, and on a certain level, I felt like, well, this is kind of like, a tween version of Ebony, Ivory, and Jade. And that's all I could think about. And then I was thinking, my daughter would never sit still for this movie. She just wouldn't. So I think it kind of misses the mark, but whatever, it's all right.
Heavy duty voice talent in that movie. Andre Brower and Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah. They paid some money for people.
I see the house next door.
Yeah.
2, directed by Dion Taylor, who I love referring to as the hardest working black filmmaker in all of Hollywood. Dion Taylor has 3 times as many credits as Spike Lee. That's because he makes a movie every 25, 30 minutes. He's probably wrapping up 2 or 3 of them right now.
It's unreal.
He knocks them out, and I'm joking, but I'm not joking because I deeply respect that. In the same way that I deeply respect the work of Tyler Perry, even though I'm not particularly nuts about all these films. I'm not particularly nuts about all of Dion's films. This one here is a sequel to Meet the Blacks, Mike Epps, and all these. So these funny black films that more or less live somewhere in the space. Although sometimes they'll make a thriller, a sort of fairly serious sort of thriller. But these movies mostly live in the space where the Fridays of old. Remember the Fridays? They mean to live in those spaces. with whatever the new talent might be, Cat Williams, Mike Epps, whoever it might be. And they're funny enough. And they fill
Funny
a certain
enough
slot.
is a good way of putting it.
Funny enough, they fill a certain sort of slot. But hey, what I love about them is he makes them. He makes these movies. Sure. He goes out, he gets the money. These movies have perfectly fine production values. You're paying union wages, putting actors to work, giving people shots. I love it.
It's the same thing that we talk about with Andy Sidaris.
Yeah.
And there are a number of those guys, right? They show up at the American film market every year with like 3 or 4 new movies. They're always working. They're always hustling. Those movies, those movies are never made for more than $1.50, and they never sell for more than about $2. But you know what? That's 50 cents profit.
Yep. And that's the way it works. Everybody actually got paid. So I have to say that about Dion, as I poke at him a little bit here. This one here in Midland, just like all the other ones, but kind of funny. And, kind of funny is usually good enough.
Got a Kino Lorber title here that came out a little while ago, but it's worth mentioning. This is a new Abel Ferrara film, which was, I think, in the can, but shelved for a little bit. Got middling critical reaction to it. It's called Tommaso, Tommaso. And it is a really kind of unusual Abel Ferrara film that stars Willem Dafoe as Pier Paolo Pasolini, the late Italian and very scandalous and controversial Italian director.
Died controversially.
Salo.
Yeah.
It died controversially. He was stabbed to death by a male prostitute from whom he was either or soliciting sex or drugs. In any case, Pasolini is most known for Salo, which has had a Criterion release in the past, is considered just a sadistic, disgusting movie. Look at child abuse and fascism and all kinds of other things. It's really a pretty vile film. But at the same time, Pasolini is also known for one of the most interesting biographical films of Jesus called The Passion of the Gospel According to St. Matthew. And so fascinating, conflicted figure. Again, we're talking about people like we've talked about a number of them this week who died prematurely. But so being kind of a tormented guy himself, Abel Ferrara wanted to look at Pasolini and sort of do a film portrait of him. It's not a biopic. It's sort of a portrait of him preparing for one of his films. And it is quite compelling. Dafoe is very good in it. The movie's a little bit uneven. They didn't have a huge budget for it. But if you're an Abel Ferrara fan and if you understand what a lot of his demons are and what a lot of Pasolini's demons are, they kind of overlap to some degree. And it's worth, if you know that going in, it's worth a sit down.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. Tim, they got the band back together for this thing. Patrick Hughes directs this sequel of sorts to Hitman's Bodyguard when this is the Hitman's Wife's Bodyguard. It's a lot of wonderful people that I love. Ryan Reynolds and Morgan Freeman and Samuel L. Jackson, Antonio Banderas, Salma Hayek. I kind of love all those people. They're all really terrific, but I don't really love the movie.
No. This thing is trying so hard. It's trying so hard. It gives a whole lot of juice to Selma's character. She's the wife, but she's far and away more lethal than the Bodyguard, than Samuel Jackson's. He's the Hitman, and just this whole thing. And she's more lethal than all. I keep thinking to myself, they need to hire her.
Would this have worked in the 80s or 90s when we were making these kinds of things? If if this were a John McTiernan movie from 1992 or something, when we're doing the Lethal Weapon thing and the Schwarzenegger and Stallone, would this have been able to live in that moment more successfully?
I bet you it would. I bet you it would. I bet you it would. I bet you would. But then again, it has to live, within the context of the weight of all of these films that have sort of come and gone before us. Sure, it would have been fun back then. But watching it now. Particularly, Samuel Jackson would have been in some of those movies back in the 80s. And seeing him running around, I'm just thinking to myself, guys, I think we've been here. I think we've done that.
Well, speaking of where we've been and done that, Supernova on Blu-ray, which is fine. This is from Bleecker Street and Wolf Video. It's one of the higher profile things that Wolf has released in quite a while. Wolf is primarily an LGBT label. And that's the subject matter here, but boy, they have a couple of great actors. Colin Firth and Stanley Tucci play a couple, a longtime couple, who are on a road trip. And there's a reason why they're on a road trip. If you have ever seen in your life, if you've ever actually seen, I don't know, a movie, you know you know what the road trip is about. It's not just they're going to get somewhere and party. Somebody's dying. Duh. Yeah. And so it's one of those movies. There are people on a road trip because somebody's dying and you have to get there. And then of course they die and there's a reconciliation. Okay. And you find out the relationship has not been as perfect as they like to portray. And it's the usual. This is a very, very familiar plot. It's been done with gay couples. It's been done with straight couples. It's been done, in foreign languages. This story has been done 100 times. And they're all sort of trying to wrestle with the same thing, which is that we can't really reconcile ourselves to the idea of losing a loved one that we've been with a long time. And you look back on the relationship and all that. That said, despite all the familiarity and everything that is just so boilerplate, I just love these two actors. I just love these two actors. And what a pairing. Stanley Tucci and Colin Firth are so good. They could just do anything. And
they're wonderful. But you know what I found strange about this movie at the time? It has nothing to do with the movie, because I think it is a lovely movie, very familiar, as you say. But you have these two straight actors playing gay men. And nobody said anything. Which, I didn't say anything, and I wouldn't say anything, but it's really interesting the way we decide to pick and choose these things, isn't it? Yeah. So anyway, it's a lovely movie. Very familiar in 1,000 different ways, but, there really isn't any reason, for the two straight actors to be playing the two gay guys. Although I don't have any problem with it at all. And I think it made for a great movie. Anyway, interesting how these things sort of, get discussed sometimes when they do and when they don't.
Very true. So, a really, really interesting movie here. Stone in the Water. Stone in the Water, with an interesting tagline, Love Breeds Madness. This is a really interesting indie thriller, and it's being independently released. You should definitely look for it. Check it out. This was made just a couple of years ago by a director named Daniel Cohen, written and directed by Daniel Cohen. And Bonnie Bedelia, who doesn't get enough credit. Remember, Bonnie Bedelia kind of, captivated all of us in Jonathan Kaplan's Heart Like a Wheel a million years ago, and then went on to kind of be relegated to Bruce Willis's wife in the Die Hard movies. Bonnie Bedelia is an amazing actress, and she's still an amazing actress. And here she plays a woman, and let me try to outline this. This is a woman who is devastated by the death of her son. And then there seems to be some kind of redemption that happens when a woman shows up, a young woman shows up, and is pregnant, claiming that she's pregnant with the late son's child. Very interesting premise, right? Mm. And the question is sort of less about, well, is it or isn't it your grandchild? The question is, when you're grief stricken and something happens that is, whether true or not, that gives you a chance to take away the grief, do you go with it just to get rid of the grief, or does truth matter? To what degree would you be willing to say, I need to know if this is true, versus whether it's true or not, it's going to help me get through this? Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting concept. And I will, of course, say nothing about where it goes and the turns that it takes. But it is it's a very, very well done film. Props to Daniel Cohen for a rock solid script and some very compelling direction. And Melissa Fumero and Bonnie Bedelia, they kind of nail it. And it's a very, very very compelling film. It is called A Stone in the Water, and it is on Blu-ray. Mm.
I see Wrath of a Man here, man. The Guy Ritchie, making a Guy Ritchie film in a Guy Ritchie kind of way. Jason Statham. You got a couple different kinds of Jason films. You got Jason films, which are fighting films. Jason punching, kicking, beating people up. And then you have Jason films, which are gun films, which is usually what's happening when he's working with Guy. Not all that much fighting, more about guns. This is a Guy Ritchie, Jason Statham gun film. There's a whole lot going on in this movie. And what I like about it is that if you stick with it, all of the little threads that are dangled out in this movie that seems like it's full of just disparate characters doing things that don't make any sense. Who's who? What's going on? They all come together and tie up absolutely beautifully at the end. It's extremely satisfying that in that way. It's satisfying in that Guy Ritchie film kind of way. Lots of guys talking manly talk, doing manly things. It has to do with armored cars, and armored car robberies and devious people doing all kinds of stuff. That's what we think we're watching. And indeed, all of that is going on. There are armored cars. There are armored car robberies. There are dastardly people doing devious things. But the movie ain't about none of that. The movie isn't about any of that. And what the movie is actually about is what sort of gobsmack you as you work your way through it. So in that way, frankly, this is number 2 on my list of Guy Ritchie films. If we start with Snatch, and I guess we're talking Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, and a whole bunch of guys, all of them Sherlock Holmes and all that stuff. Frankly, this is my number 2 favorite. Snatch, number 1.
Snatch is so funny.
But this is my number 2 favorite Guy Ritchie film of all those Guy Ritchie films.
I will only say this. I'll say Jason Statham at a certain point in his career realized that what he was doing was basically crossing Michael Caine with Clint Eastwood. He was talking like Michael Caine, and then he would put that Clint Eastwood whisper on it. That's what he did. He crossed Michael Caine with Clint Eastwood. It's fascinating. That occurred to me the other day, and I'm like, oh, that's all he's doing. He's totally learned.
You nailed it.
And my favorite line, my favorite line from Snatch is?
Yeah.
This is my favorite line from Snatch. Yeah, but
I think Brad Pitt said that.
He did. You're absolutely right. You remember very well. The Waterman is a really, really fun movie. It's a great family movie, directed by and starring or co-starring David Oyelowo, who's not putting himself front and center here. And it's basically a kind of a childhood quest, mythical tale thing in the vein of those movies that we saw as kids, Escape from Witch Mountain, where kids are off on a mission and adults, are like, what are they doing? We've got to go find them. And David Oyelowo, of course, is, one of the fathers. I've got to go find them. So it's more intense than what he usually does. He usually plays these very benign figures, and here he's a little bit more intense, but it's good. He puts himself there, and it's just wonderful. The whole idea of looking for this, searching for immortality is always a good arc for these kinds of family films. And I think it's lovely. Rosario Dawson is terrific.
Yeah.
And the kids are just great. The kids are just absolutely great. Alfred Molina shows up in this as well. It's fantastic. It's a good film. The Waterman, good solid directing effort from David Oyelowo. He deserves more.
I'm looking at this thing called Midnight in the Switchgrass.
Oh yeah.
Which is interesting for this reason. So this is Bruce Willis, Emile Hirsch, Megan Fox too, for that matter. And this fairly, expensive, high production value film, that was made during the pandemic here in the last year or so. I got to tell you, Lucas Haas, this film, in any other sort of context would probably have been a theatrically releasable film. It's pretty good too. It's just sort of interesting, the way these things have worked out over the last year or two. But all these, Emile Hirsch, of course, was in Into the Wild. Megan Fox, we know from all the those Transformer movies we were talking about and everything else. And of course, Bruce Willis.
Do you know what else we know I have Megan Fox from?
Yeah.
She now basically does massive Instagram posts of herself on the way to Erewhon, flaunting her new Erewhon shopping fashion, which is a bodysuit that shows under boob and abs. I learned about that by reading In Style, which is where I go to see how far journalism has sunk these days. And I even did a Facebook post. I'm like, are you serious? We're getting articles about Megan Fox, like, posing her way to the market while she flashes under boob and abs in a bodysuit.
She's probably making a hell of a lot more money doing that than she is in these movies.
Yeah, I'm sure. Anyway,
That's so mean.
Natasha Henstridge is still kicking around. So is Costas Mandylor. They're still making movies, and they still look great. And they are in Night of the Sicario.
Yeah, Which has nothing to do with
nothing to do with Sicario.
No, nothing whatsoever.
No.
But clever.
It's just
you can't copyright a name.
No, it's like a lot of those things. It's like Emmanuel.
Yeah.
You do with 2 M's, 1 M, 2 L's, 1 L, no E. You'll find a way. Anyway,
Django too, same thing.
Yeah, this is a pretty straightforward, gun thriller, and there's like a federal witness and DEA agents and blah blah blah, the usual thing. It's not anything spectacular. The only reason I make mention of this is because Natasha Henstridge does not freaking age. She's like John Amos, man.
Yeah,
you're like, I'm sorry, but I remember how you looked 30 years ago. You've got to be like late 50s at least by now, and you still look like you're 29. I don't understand it. It's very distressing.
Yeah, I love it. I wish I had some of that.
Spiral from the Book of Saw with Chris Rock and Samuel Jackson trying to inject new life into this franchise. I don't know, Tim.
I think this franchise needs to go away.
I feel like that. I feel like this is way beneath Sam Jackson. I get it. The man they throw money at him like there's no tomorrow. And how do you say, like, you want to pay me how much to do what? Okay.
Yeah. He's not in that movie. He's not in that movie 10 minutes.
Not like if even half that.
Yeah.
But it's still right here. They're billing it as a Samuel Jackson thing. It's like right on the cover.
Yeah.
And I feel like, okay, I get why Chris Rock did it. I get it because Chris Rock wants to show that he can stretch. That he's more than just the guy who does, a certain kind of comedy. And that, if you want to stick him into an Adam Sandler movie or something, he wants to say, look, I'm older now. I can do a serious thing. I can be a serious actor. And I'm going to take this dumb Saw movie and I'm going to stretch it as best as I can and show you what I can do. Now, would you please give me a good movie? Yeah. I do not begrudge him a second for being in this. That said, I really do think that this is just pointless, and this whole franchise needs to go away. Max Minghella too this is really beneath him. I just wish everybody in this were making a different movie. I love them all, but I wish they were making better movies.
Yeah. What about this thing, Stardust, the early Matthew Vaughn movie? Which is, it's so like not a Matthew Vaughn movie. It's an adaptation to Neil Gaiman. I think it goes back to Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, it takes place in 1971, and it's basically a it's not a biopic, but it's a little bit like Tommaso, right? It's about an episode in the life of David Bowie, played here by Johnny Flynn. It's sort of about promoting the Bowie record, The Man Who Sold the World, but it's sort of more about that moment. It's about celebrity in that moment, the glam moment, and which was very fleeting, and it kind of came on strong, and it just flamed out very, very quickly. And it's about how Bowie sort of recognizes this and looks at that moment and adjusts himself to it, and how it sort of forges him and makes him into who he wound up being for millions and millions and millions of fans. I don't know that it's it's that great of a I don't know that it succeeds particularly at what it's trying to do. This was made about 3 years ago. I don't know that it succeeds that well at what it's trying to do, but it certainly it raises some interesting questions, and I think you can run with it after you've seen it. Jenna Malone as Bowie's wife is very, very good, by the way. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's some some things going on to it. The tagline is good. David before Bowie. That's a good tagline. That's a good tagline. I give him credit. That's not like one of the ones we always make fun of. Tim, did you see Luca, the Pixar film?
No, I did not see that. I wasn't on that week, so I missed it. I heard Charles kick it real hard, but that was...
Yeah, he kicked it hard. I think he was a little tough on it, but Charles holds Pixar to a high standard, and it is not top tier Luca, or top tier Pixar. But here's the thing. I did like a lot of it, and my daughter liked a lot of it. So I used my daughter to kind of gauge how I respond to a lot of these things. This is out on 4K. They did not send us the 4K because Disney's being stingy and cheap these days because, they're hurting financially. So
they do. Scarlett Johansson came after him. So,
Oh yeah. So we get a Blu-ray instead of a 4K because they've got to save their pennies because ScarJo just sued them. Sometimes I just don't get, I don't understand this business, but in any case, Movies Anywhere code on here, obviously, because it's Disney owned. But here's the thing. Luca is the directing debut of a very, very talented director, Enrico Casarosa, who did a very successful Pixar short, which I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's La Luna. That's it, La Luna. He did La Luna. Yeah. And so this has a lot of similar DNA with La Luna. And it's really quite sweet. It's about a friendship between children, but one of them is a sea creature. It's kind of like a merman or a silky, whatever you want to call them. And it takes place on the Italian Riviera, circa what I think the 1940s or something like that. And it has a really wonderful vibe to it, and it's got a really nice mythical vibe. It has, it touches on a lot of those things that we get in movies like The Secret of Roan Inish, John Sayles' Secret of Roan Inish, where there's this you're trying to sort of bridge the gap between two different species, between the people of the sea and the people of the land. But really, it finds a wonderful magical place there. And is it perfect? By no means. Is it classic Pixar? Not really. But I do think there's a lot of real sweetness between the lines in this film. So I do recommend this in ways that I have not recommended a lot of Disney animation of late. We only got a couple minutes left. Let's let me see. Let me plug a couple of these arrows, and we'll save the foreign stuff for next time, because there's some good foreign stuff that we haven't gotten to.
Yeah.
Yasuzo Masamura's Blind Beast from Arrow. This is there's kind of a space in Japanese cinema which lives between Japanese art films and what is often called Japsploitation. Everybody's got an exploitation moniker, right? Blaxploitation, Ozploitation, Japsploitation. They all kind of live. All those words are only vaguely accurate. This is based on a story by Edogawa Rampo, the famous Japanese novelist who was sort of memorialized in one of my all-time favorite Japanese movies, The Mystery of Rampo. And it's artier than it is exploitation-y, but it's still probably a little bit too exploitation-y for me personally. There's I don't want to give this away. There's there's kind of a Silence of the Lambsy element to this, but it goes into dark places I wish it didn't go, and I don't think it needed to go. It's a little bit too nasty for me, and it's very stylish, but it's just, kidnapping women in peril, women in peril movies. I have a problem with them.
Yeah.
I've got a daughter. 12 Monkeys in a Steelbook Blu-ray edition is fantastic. I love this movie. I think it's one of Terry Gilliam's best. It's so good. So many great things on here. There's an audio. Tim, I know you're a big fan of Chuck Roven.
Yeah.
Especially where this movie is concerned. And
Chuck Roven's producer of the film.
Of the film. And Chuck Roven, of course, produces all the DC stuff now, all the Batman stuff. And, everything DC, they get Chuck Roven because he's an amazing producer. But he's
which he proves. What is this? 1990 something or other?
Yes. And I remember you telling me I had not seen The Hamster Factor, which is the documentary on the making of this film, which is on here. And Chuck Roven does an audio commentary for this with Terry Gilliam, which is essential listening, absolutely essential listening. But I remember you telling me, you got to see The Hamster Factor. And the same filmmakers would, of course, go on to do Lost in La Mancha, which was, supposed to also be a DVD extra, and then the movie blew up.
Yeah.
For stories based on, I've told my involvement in that story many times here, I'm sure. And you told me, you got to watch The Hamster Factor. Chuck Roven saves this movie at least 3 times.
Yep.
And I'm like, I got to see that. And sure enough, there are like 3 moments in here where Terry Gilliam is about to go completely off the reservation, and Chuck Roven pulls him back.
Yeah.
Just pulls him back. And you go, that's a producer.
Yeah. People ask, what do producers do? Watch this. And you saved it. Terry Gilliam would have made a mess. And it would have done him well to have producers like Chuck Roven around for a lot of his movies. Quentin Tarantino, same situation, frankly. I'm going to tell you, when you look at a Quentin movie and the Quentin movie isn't quite what you think it should be, look and see who's producing that movie. And I can tell you who it won't be. Because Quentin had a few producers, particularly early in his career, not just producers to his editor Sally Minkin. Sally Minkin? think her name is Sally Mead. She was never a producer, but she saved Quentin so many times in his early career. It's ridiculous. Lawrence Bender saved him more times. Stacey Shear saved him more times than you can shake a stick at. Filmmakers, particularly certain kinds of filmmakers, need someone around to them who will say no. You're wrong.
You're right.
You've made a terrible mistake. They all do. And Chuck was that guy for Terry Gilliam.
It's like having an editor when you're a novelist. You know, you need that person who just says crossing this paragraph out. No. I should have mentioned this previously. I misfiled the stuff here. We have another Yasuzu Musumara film, which is Giants and Toys, which is wonderful. And this is the one that is probably most famous. This is basically a very, very timely satire of Japanese business culture. And it's all sort of set around a group of, it's like Mad Men set around the candy business in Japan. And it's completely insane and bonkers, and it's hilarious, and it's very pointed, and it still stands the test of time. Might even be more timely now than it was at the time when it was made. It's very sharp. It's very smart. It's based on a novel that was written in 1957, right when advertising is becoming that thing, right? Television and radio and magazines and everything's blowing up, and it's very, what's the old movie, How to Something Advertising?
How to Survive and How to Succeed in Advertising, not really something.
That's it. This is like the Japanese version of that on meth. And it comes with some pretty great extras on here. There's a new audio commentary by Japanese film scholar Irene Gonzalez Lopez, which is very, very good. And a really, really cool visual essay by Asian cinema scholar Earl Jackson. So that's fun. This is the let's see. I want to make final mention here of, let's go out on this one, and we'll save all the others for another time. Major Dundee, a Sam Peckinpah classic, great Western, and I think one of the most underrated Charlton Heston performances ever, and a Richard Harris performance that nobody gives him enough credit for. Yeah. I really like this. You know why I like this? It's so not a Peckinpah film. I mean, it is, but it isn't. You know what I mean?
Well, Peckinpah, we think it's just a sort of what we called back then the sort of outlandish violence. Yeah. Now that we look at it, I think to myself, man, what were we thinking? If we thought that was violent, but at the time, and this isn't that. This isn't that at all. Jim Hutton, in this Peckinpah film, it really, I love this one too. I'm a big fan. And you're right. People forget that Richard Harris is in this movie because Charlton Heston is so damn good in this movie.
That's
James Colburn,
Warren Oates,
Rock Peters,
LQ Jones. I mean, it's a fantastic cast, and it really it is similar in some respects to The Searchers. It's sort of like Peckinpah's version of The Searchers, but it's and the story basically centers around Charlton Heston as the titular Major Dundee, who is this cavalry officer, this Union cavalry officer, who is trying to track down an Apache chief, and so it's a pretty classic standard Western trope, but it's not. It's symbolic and it's epic. And Peckinpah pulls his punches, is what I like. Normally, Peckinpah's a guy who just unleashes, his worst id on the movie, but he pulls his punches here because I think he realizes he's working with a more artful canvas. And he really kind of gets into a different zone, and he's very introspective in some places here. And I just think it's almost Sergio Leone-esque in some respects. It's like Peckinpah's Sergio Leone and John Ford film. Yeah, there's just a lot of great stuff. Nick Redman, the wonderful, wonderful Nick Redman, David Weddle, whom I've sat next to at our dinners. And a bunch of other people are part of one commentary. There's another commentary with some other film scholars. This thing is just loaded. There's a feature documentary about the making of the film by Mike Siegel, which has interviews with a lot of the surviving members. It's just on and on and on and on. I haven't even scratched the surface. This is a 2-disc Blu-ray. It's just filled with great stuff. It is an all-time classic Peckinpah film. And you got to get it. You got to check it out. It's worth having. It really is. This is like when people talk about great Charlton Heston performances, they never mention this.
No,
they never mention this. It's like, they will even mention Touch of Evil, where it's like, no, he's not good in Touch of Evil. Touch of Evil is a great movie, but Heston is not what's great about it. Heston, there's a terrible Mexican accent. It's ridiculous. No, but they'll mention, Planet of the Apes and Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments, where he's not even very good, and Soylent Green, and they skip right over Major Dundee. They never mention it. This is one of his great performances. It's really good. So there it is. That's it for this week, and we'll be back next week. I got some great foreign stuff here we didn't get to this week, obviously. Tim, you and I are actually going to see each other in person for the first time in a year and a half. Weeks, aren't we?
Yeah, we got ourselves a meeting coming up. Let's cross our fingers and hope everything stays, copacetic, and people can move around and come hang out here at the old Marengo House.
It's going to be great. All right, everybody, have yourselves a great week. Stay safe.